Hi, I'm Lee Gantz. I just want to take a minute and talk about earthquakes and different crisis events that can take place in the coming years. I used to live in Los Angeles, just south of Los Angeles, in Anaheim. I was a volunteer on a search and rescue team, and we were trained to know how to help people who had had their houses collapse and maybe had become trapped in their homes, to offer a variety of services, including a center where people could come who had been injured, and we could make arrangements to have an ambulance come and pick them up. So a lot of planning was being done, but in conversation among other volunteers, it occurred to me that a lot of the volunteers probably wouldn't be available in the time of a disaster, such as a major earthquake in the LA area. So, and even myself, I have 4 kids and they're under the ages of 17. And my wife, who is a housewife, I was about 3 miles from my office to get home in the event of an earthquake. Probably I would have to walk home. If it's a 7.8, I'm sure I would have to walk home. You have to be concerned about things like downed power lines. I went to a special utility company presentation for volunteers, and after about 45 minutes of talking about utilities, they had not covered the matter of downed power lines. Now, some of the power lines are underground in Anaheim and the surrounding cities, but there are some overhead power lines as well. So I asked, I said, if the power line is laying on the ground, how safe is it to jump over it? And they said if you get within 3 feet of it, you'll either lose an arm, a leg, or your life. Did you hear that? An arm, a leg, or your life. Major point. It was left out of the presentation. So these are things you need to know. If you're walking down the street and you're trying to get from one place to another after a major earthquake and you step over a power line, well, what can I say? At least if you've watched the video this far, you know the dangers of that. Now, there's other things that are of considerable importance, and one is, and I'll be short about this, but one is that FEMA is not going to be able to come into town and start distributing 5-gallon bottles of water the day after a major earthquake in LA and Anaheim. It's just not going to happen. The roads are not going to be passable. The overpasses are going to be blocked off until they can check and make sure that they're safe to drive under. All these things take time. There's going to be a lot of cars on the freeway that were abandoned because of the circumstances that they couldn't drive. Couldn't drive the cars down the freeway to get home or get to their family members. So it's going to be a tough scenario. And the latest predictions are that this is probably going to happen in the next 10 years. Now, if you look up and down the Pacific Rim, which goes all the way around to Japan and comes down around New Zealand, and then you've got the South American countries like Chile. Chile's had a couple of big major earthquakes in the last few years. They're on the list for some of the biggest ones in history, as well as Alaska. And so Los Angeles is about 150 years past due because the fault line, the San Andreas fault line, runs about 200 miles, almost a straight line, not quite. And the straighter the line, the more intense quaking you can have. And you've got 12 plates that make up the Earth. And the number 2 and the number 3 largest plateaus are coming together for the San Andreas fault line. Now, I'm not a seismologist, so excuse my terminology if it's not exactly 100% accurate, but that's what I heard in a meeting. And a friend of mine is a seismologist. And we used to give free presentations warning people of all these things, that the displacement on a 7.8 to 8.2 earthquake is not just shaking. It is back and forth motion. So if I'm in a room, like in my dining room in Anaheim, I had 9 7-foot-tall bookcases full of heavy reference manuals. And I knew that even though I'd anchored those to the wall, that they were going to eventually come loose and the books were going to come flying off the shelf, even though I had done some work to restrain some of those higher up books from coming off the shelf. It's all going to come down. You're talking about 3 to 4 minutes of movement. Now, this is an opinion by a seismologist. If you talk to another seismologist, you'll get another opinion, I'm sure. But to be on the safe side, and you're talking about your kid's life and your family member's life in your own home, just look around and see what you have that might be a danger. In both of my girls' bedrooms, I had purchased headboards that had mirrors. Well, it was a nice set. I picked up a couple of them, and they were happy to have them. But that was not very smart on my part as I look back on it later, and we got rid of them because, you don't want glass around the bed. If the earthquake hits in the morning, like the one I experienced years ago, it came at 3 o'clock in the morning. We woke up to the blinds swaying back and forth, and we knew we were experiencing a moderate earthquake. Years later, there was a more extensive one. My neighbor on the back side of my fence, he and our backyards met, and we had a common fence. And so we built a storage shed in his backyard full of earthquake emergency supplies. It included clothing, tools, just anything, some temporary food supplies, camping gear, tents, blankets. We had it all. Because you just don't know, nobody can tell you, the most advanced notice you're going to get is 20 seconds. If you're not around the radio and TV and you're not on your computer and it starts moving in Southern California and starts working its way north, which it will, the most advanced warning you will get is about 20 seconds. And why is that? Because all the power is going to be shut off in the Anaheim area and north of Anaheim when the major power plant gets shaken. And one day I was in my office and all the power went off, and I thought, uh-oh, here it comes. And you're supposed to get underneath something, get under a desk, get under a conference table, get under something heavy. Why? To protect your head. Well, I got under the conference table and nothing happened. There was no shaking, nothing happened. It turned out that our whole business complex had lost power, but it was not because of the major electrical power unit in the city. But that's the major warning, is 20 seconds. It's the most you're going to get under the circumstances. So get well supplied. I've got another video called Bug Out Bag. Watch that video to get a list of things you need to have in your bug out bag or your emergency kit. And I would say water. You got to have a lot of water. I've been kidded about having 10 55-gallon drums of water in my backyard when I lived in LA, in that area. But I'll tell you what, I'd be the first person people would look for after that 7.8 earthquake. They'd be coming to me for water. They wouldn't be laughing about it. Those drums are 15 to 30 bucks a piece. Polyurethane, they're food grade. You can buy them all day long for probably about 30. Get yourself 5 of them, maybe even 10. If you've got a big backyard and you've got room to store them, you'll be glad you did. If you're going to live in LA another 10 years, I'd say get some water. You're going to need it. I hope this has been helpful to you. Again, my book is Earthquake Preparedness: Emergencies, Survival Supplies, and Safety Tips. It's got more information on what I've been talking about. It's got the list of things to have in your bug out bag and emergency supplies to have on hand. I hope this has been helpful to you. I'm Lee Gantz. Thank you very much.